Storybook does a great job of taking the names of stories and components inside of our code and translating them into human readable names for the Storybook interface. But sometimes you want to separate the two. One can look really great in the user interface and one makes more sense in code. In this quick tip, let's answer some of your questions about how to rename stories and components inside of Storybook. Let's dive in. File system-based routing systems are super popular in frameworks like Next.js, SvelteKit, Astro, Remix, and now Storybook 7 users can use the file system to organize Storybook. In this next project, I have a bunch of components in the app directory, and they show up in Storybook under this example root group. That's because each one of these has a title field that includes example. But I can opt into file system-based routing, putting this in a components root group by simply deleting this. Now we have a components group with button inside of it. I can do the same for header, simply delete, save. Now that moved into the components group. Now, what if we wanted a new group called pages to put our composed layouts in? Just move these pages into the pages directory, change an import, open the story, and delete our title field. Now we have a sidebar that matches the structure of our file system. You may be asking, how does it know to start inside of the app directory? Well, that is configured in main and will be dependent on wherever you start your glob. Now, what if you're not on Storybook 7, or you think that the way that your components are organized in your app won't translate well to Storybook? The title property in component meta gives us complete control over where a component shows up in the sidebar. We can name it anything that we want, my component. We can put it inside of groups, my group, and we can nest as many groups as we'd like, my subgroup. You'll notice that all root groups have this root styling of all caps. You can change that in a configuration option that I'll link below. Note that while these are auto-titled from the file system, my group is created by this string title. We can add other components like our heading component simply by adding a title with the same segments. We can even skip certain segments if we want to nest it differently than other components. In CSF3, you can use the name property to specify the name of individual stories. If we don't like the generated name of our primary story, we can change it to something like default. Now, default shows up in the sidebar. This can come in handy when you want to add numbers or special characters. By default, stories use a formatter known as start case from Lodash. It will turn lowercase single names into uppercase single names. It splits words based on uppercase characters, retains groupings of uppercase characters in case they're initialisms, and also observes underscores as spaces. I mentioned numbers earlier because each number is treated as an individual word when using start case. There are times they may want no nesting at all, just a single story for a single component. To opt into single component stories, first ensure that you only have one story by deleting all of the rest of the stories. Then make sure that autodocs is turned off. And finally, the name of the story needs to match the name of the component. This is another area where name can be handy, where button is already defined in scope. Let's change this to button. And now this single story appears right in the root. This is especially handy for components where teammates use just the controls to set up different scenarios and work with the design of an existing component. That's all for today's Storybook quick tip. If you'd like to learn more about writing stories using CSF3, check out this video right up here. My next tip will be about sidebar organization and customization, so be sure to subscribe and enable notifications if you don't want to miss it. I'm Chantastic. We'll see you in the next one.